Support for Headline Humboldt is made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, President Donald Trump is asking the U.S. Congress to rescind around $1 billion in funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a move that could see this and other rural stations closed for lack of sufficient operating funds. Also, the Humboldt Area Foundation has named its new CEO, longtime foundation employee Sara Dronkers, who sat down with us this week for an interview about her priorities, this moment, and the importance of local charities. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. It's an important lesson on the interconnectivity of modern life, economics, and media to watch the ongoing struggle of markets and money in the face of dramatic political changes. We've all been witness to the sudden shift in policy direction affected by new President Donald Trump and how those impacts have rippled through virtually every layer of our society. The mood of the country is different now, online, on Main Street, on Wall Street, and everywhere else. While we pretend to lead independent and isolated lives, we're all embedded in a matrix of monetary and social ties that quivers with every disturbing move of the now seemingly predatory federal government. So the economy seems to be teetering. Our network, PBS, is now under siege, and KEAT itself may cease to be by the end of this year. And two of the most prominent upcoming projects for Humboldt County, the wind farm and the Nordic Aquafarms fish breeding facility, are now delayed at the very least and face significant hurdles and ultimately panning out. As the country's fate further unfolds, we'll be hard-pressed to find any single thread of modern society that remains unmolested by this current shift toward authoritarianism. When is enough enough? Can Americans demonstrate the kind of unified and powerful protest action necessary to stem the tide? We'll see, but the longer we wait, the less of what we've long cherished will even be around to be saved. This is real, folks. We're in the midst of the remaking of America, and unless we get loud and get public, we won't have any voice at all in how this will all turn out. Waiting until next election day is too long if we really want to preserve the personality and character of this country, perhaps save it from its own worst inclinations. Can we save it? Yes. Will we? Such remains to be seen. The interview today is with new Humboldt Area Foundation CEO Sara Dronkers, but first, the news. The Trump administration has drafted a memo to Congress outlining its intent to end nearly all federal funding for public media, including NPR and PBS. The memo, which the administration plans to send to Congress when it reconvenes from recess on April 28th, will open a 45-day window in which the House and Senate can either approve the rescission or allow the money to be restored. In a statement on Monday that did not refer to the memo, the White House said, quote, "For years, American taxpayers have been on the hook for subsidizing National Public Radio, NPR, and the Public Broadcasting Service, PBS, which spread radical, woke propaganda disguised as news," unquote. If this plan succeeds, KEAT would lose a lion's share of its annual funding. The proposed Nordic Farms fish facility on Samoa Peninsula isn't dead, but may take longer than previously thought. Oh, and more investors are needed. Such was the word this week from the company during an interview with the Lost Coast Outpost's Ryan Burns. The company recently canceled plans to build a $500 million fish facility in Maine and now admits to a more nuanced timeline for its Humboldt County project. New permitting and environmental mitigation hurdles are being cited as the source of these changes. Company officials say it'll now likely be a few years before it can begin the demolition of the Samoa pulp mill site that would be its home. The fish farm has been in the works for 6 years so far and is projected to cost some $650 million. When completed, the owners say the facility could employ 150 full-time employees while producing up to 27,000 metric tons of yellowtail kingfish per year. As pointed out by Ryan Burns, the recent rattling of the markets and the unsettled state of credit worldwide aren't favorable conditions for this large a project. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm Arne Hjeltnes. I'm on my way to record another episode of People of the North. I truly believe in storytelling, sharing voices from my native Norway and beyond. That's what public media is all about. So when Public Media Giving Days approach, I want to thank you for your support. It really makes a difference.
Did you know that donating your used vehicle to your local PBS station will give you access to PBS Passport? With Passport, you can watch incredible dramas from Masterpiece, documentaries from Ken Burns, great performances, Nova, nature, and more. Why let that old car, truck, motorcycle, or RV gather dust when it could make a real difference? Your generosity can help keep the quality programming you love on air. Each vehicle donation helps us in our mission to foster a love of learning culture and community. So take pride in your ride and get streaming with Passport.
Here is my conversation with new Humboldt Area Foundation CEO, Sara Dronkers.
The Humboldt Area Foundation is our region's community foundation, and a community foundation is different than a private foundation or other foundations that you may hear about. So a community foundation is actually a collection of local donor funds that are directed toward local causes. So Humboldt Area Foundation and Wild Rivers Community Foundation serves a 4-county region. That's Humboldt, Trinity, Del Norte, and Curry County, Oregon. We have a vision of a thriving, just, healthy, and equitable region. And we're currently in the midst of working through 4 decade-long goals of increasing racial equity, thriving youth and families, healthy ecosystems and environments, and a just economy.
Now, so I know that you guys are governed by a board, but you also have, individual employees that go out and work with various members of the community and people who are seeking funding. How do you guys make your funding decisions and your priority decisions? Is that purely from a board down, or how does that work?
That's a great question. Well, it actually starts with the community. So it starts with talking to our community partners, nonprofit organizations, local donors, elected officials. Everyone in this community is a partner of ours because we're here to serve the community. And so it's important that when we set our goals and strategy, that's really a reflection of the community and what the community wants to work on and needs support around. So it really starts with talking to community members and our partners. And then it does go to staff and board for discussion and, talking about our resources and where we might be able to make an impact. And that's what really drives our decisions. Another thing that's unique about a community foundation is we are really driven by the goals of our donors. So some of our donors come to us with very specific goals that they'd like to achieve in the community. So that may be supporting one specific nonprofit, or it may be supporting an interesting field like youth and families or healthy ecosystems. And in that case, we do grant rounds and we're able to award grants that are within that field, but based on what's going on in community at the moment. And then we do have some amount of discretionary funds that really we drive those decisions through our strategy and goals that I mentioned.
Now, you've been named the new executive director, and it's exciting. For one, you're local, and you've been local for a long time, which I think is important. Not to knock previous executive directors, but I think it's a good thing. Describe for our viewers what impact an executive director has on the operations and the visions of Humboldt Area Foundation, and from that, maybe pivot into what your priorities might be personally.
Sure. Wonderful. So, actually the CEO is the title now. That's
CEO, sorry.
in line with the community foundations. Sounds a little highfalutin, but it's the norm for the field. So yes, the CEO actually really has a big part of setting our future goals and our strategies, and then especially our operations of how we get there. So I'm excited to come into this role at a time where we are already set. We're 4 years into a 10-year strategy. So I don't need to come in and shake anything up. What I would like to do is really build our local relationships and our local impact so that people are feeling and seeing us more in community. It's very common for us to be out in community and have people who've never heard of Humboldt Area Foundation or Wild Rivers Community Foundation. Or maybe they know us because their child got a scholarship, but they don't know that we do other grant making, or they know us because they're on a nonprofit board, but they don't know that, we have a program that's supporting the Klamath River, for example. So just spending more time out in community and really ensuring that folks know what we're here for and how we can partner and serve them.
It's remarkable to me how many pies Humboldt Area Foundation and the Wild Rivers Fund have their fingers in. It's stunning, actually. Whenever you talk to people who are involved in nonprofits or doing particular projects, a lot of the times the funding goes back to Humboldt Area Foundation or some partnership there. What do you think for people who are unfamiliar? What would you point to as some of the glimmering gems of things that Humboldt Area Foundation has been able to accomplish and that you're particularly proud of for your organization?
Yeah, I'm particularly proud, especially in this moment, of the pivots that we were able to make during COVID in response and soon after in responding to other natural disasters. So community foundations are really uniquely positioned to bring community and resources together during disasters and emergencies. And so when COVID started and our world's completely shifted, we were able to start a COVID regional response fund. And that really prioritized giving to nonprofits who were responding to that crisis in unique ways. So things like the Senior Center Meals on Wheels all of a sudden had a lot more meals to send out on wheels. And, healthcare was looking different and obviously under extreme pressure. Kids weren't going to school. There were different needs for youth. And so we were able to partner with some funders outside of the region and bring money in that we were able to then disseminate to local nonprofits. And from that, we pivoted with wildfires and earthquakes into starting a disaster response and resilience fund. And that really is intended to help local communities both respond and prepare for disasters, both as a grant maker and a partner. So of course, there's the immediate impacts of a disaster, but there's also a long rebuilding and a resiliency for preparing for the next disaster. And so that's what that fund has been set up to do. And it's just been a wonderful resource for us to be able to show up to our local community in times of need.
And you have, you mentioned the disaster response fund and other things that arise directly out of local need. When those things originate, is it someone coming to the board or coming to you and saying, hey, look, there's this glaring need where we need funding and there's no mechanism for us to tap into, say, larger entities that may have that funding available? So you kind of take the helm to kind of facilitate that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. We hear of projects and needs in all sorts of ways. Sometimes it's folks coming to us. Sometimes it's the many collaborative spaces that we show up in and we hear about what's going on in places that, need assistance. It is a unique role for us to be able to be in touch with some of the out of area funders who otherwise they don't know this region. They don't know where to make an impact. And so we're able to sort of be that bridge for bringing funds in from out of the area and then getting them out to our local communities, which is huge. So for instance, we were just talking about the COVID fund and the disaster response fund. The COVID fund, we were able to give 3.4 million out of, and so far we've distributed 3.7 million in disaster funding. And a lot of that funding is coming from foundations or donors outside the area who say, I see this earthquake happened, how can I help? And so it's both of that and, of course, many local donors who come together and want to support their own community.
The pattern that's typically followed, or at least has been followed in the past, is people will bequeath like estate funds to you guys and say, we'd like this money to be established as a fund going forward to support A, B, or C, correct?
Correct.
And if people are interested in doing that, how would you direct them if they wanted to perhaps look at starting some kind of legacy fund like that or anything of that nature?
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we pride ourselves on working with donors of all sizes. So you don't need to be a wealthy person to come to the foundation and learn about giving back to community. We have hundreds of funds, over 900 funds at this time. So really the easiest way is to go to our website, which is hafoundation.org. We have a page there on ways to give. We also have a wonderful donor services team that is happy to meet with folks and talk about what do you care about in community and how can we support that. And we also work with folks on, their wills or estate plans so that after their lifetime, they can continue to support causes they have cared about during their lifetime.
It's interesting to me, and what you just said kind of triggered a question I had about that. You guys have to be really plugged in. I mean, to so much that's going on for needs that are happening now, but also needs that may, eventually come up, and that the funding is going to have to be there in order to build an infrastructure out that may not even be on most people's radar right now. And you mentioned community meetings and things like that, but can you talk a little bit about how you guys manage to try and stay informed about the trends and needs in the community and be ready to act when and if those, needs actualize?
Yeah, that's a great point because community needs change and evolve, and that's what our organization does in response. So we have a team of program officers who are very involved in various communities, attend community meetings, bring back information to the foundation to inform us on what's going on and inform our grant making. Our board of directors also serves that purpose. So we have a 13-member board of directors, all volunteer, up from Curry County down to Southern Humboldt. And they also bring in their local expertise from where they live and the communities they belong to. One of the things that is unique about Humboldt Area Foundation as a way to give back to community around changing needs is that when a donor starts a fund for something like, school field trips, let's say, helping with school field trips, there may be certain schools that exist right now, and if they set their will up to support one specific school, that could change and evolve over time. But if they start a fund with us related to school field trips, then we can adapt and evolve that fund along with community as things do change so that we can honor their intention. But, as our community changes and grows, we have a little flexibility to do that alongside.
Another sort of point of distinction for Humboldt County has long been the number and wealth of nonprofit organizations that we have here. And you guys are known as being very wired into the nonprofit community and very supportive, not just in terms of funds, but also in terms of training and board recruitment and all the things that go into managing a nonprofit and keeping it robust and active. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about, the foundation's relationships to nonprofits and why that's so important?
Absolutely. So really, we see ourselves as not first responders. We're here to support the first responders. Those first responders are the nonprofits doing the amazing on the ground work in our community. And so it's really important for us to be able to listen and respond. And, we don't come in claiming we know the answers to what needs to happen. We're here to partner and support. And so that means a lot of listening, a lot of, hearing where things are bubbling up in community, because there's both community issues and then there's the energy to work on them. And so what we try to find is the places where those things come together and we can really provide a little support and boost an effort that's underway that people really care about and will make a big difference for our community.
Would you have any way to measure like the generosity of Humboldt County or this region as compared to other places? If you were a foundation in, some other generic area that was the same demographics in terms of population and whatnot, from what I understand, you probably wouldn't have as much money. We're known here for being a generous community. Can you quantify that, or is that just hubbub that we tell ourselves? to feel good.
It may be hubbub. I think there probably are numbers, but I don't have them handy. But I will say one thing that is very unique about this area is as a small community, we all have different roles. So we're not just one thing. You know, we're not just an executive director of a nonprofit. We're also probably then on our kids' school board and volunteering with that PTA and maybe doing, you know, coastal cleanups on the weekend. So in every person that we work with in this community, we're always wearing multiple hats. Folks give back in so many different ways. And so quantifiable or not, this region is so generous and cares so much about taking care of our own.
One question that has been coming up repeatedly is, of course, politics recently, and I don't want to necessarily get into the R's and D kind of conversation, but one thing that's happening is that there's been a lot of shakeup nationally in terms of the funding picture for a lot of different programs. And just to assure people, as I understand it, you guys aren't necessarily wired into any federal funds that would put you under federal control or dictates. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. We do not have any federal funding. All of our funding comes from private donors and other foundations. So part of our role is really right now to be in community and look for ways to add supports and make connections. We don't ever want to get out in front or speak for other nonprofits or organizations. And we know that because policies and impacts are changing literally day by day, we're taking a moment to sit back and listen and learn to what those impacts will be and how we might be able to help. Obviously, we are not going to be capable of filling a hole the size of the federal government. So it's really going to take a community effort to come together and figure out how we're going to keep our safety nets and our amazing work going. But I do know that the Northern California Association of Nonprofits, NORCAN, recently did a survey of nonprofits asking what those impacts were. And so I expect they'll have a report in the near future that will also be very helpful in identifying where people are being affected now versus where they may be affected in the future.
Yeah, I mean, some impacts just seem like they are. For instance, there's been talk about cutting back a food stamp program, and the food bank is already hard pressed because of some cuts that have been made, and so there may be new organizations that have to pop up or take in, an expanded role or responsibility, and you guys would be the natural place to turn, but that's going to be, difficult. But hopefully, private, donors will be willing to step up and help fill that gap. H.A.F as a nonprofit is, right now they're talking about defunding PBS, and so that's definitely a possibility. And I imagine there may be more who are similarly affected.
Absolutely. And even, outside of nonprofits, there are all the federal workers locally who, are facing job cuts or changes in their jobs or, not having an office to go to anymore. So the impacts really are individual and organizational.
Yeah.
So it's a hard time, and we're really here to support those who are on the ground doing that work.
This is sort of a softball question, as they say, but you guys have led the charge locally on diversity and have held workshops and fostered community conversations and have been very, very upfront and proactive in that regard. We're seeing this sort of social revolution now where the federal government is discouraging and even punishing what it considers DEI programs. And as the leader of an organization who has been out front locally, what's your response to that? I mean, obviously, you guys have been so wired in on that front. Is it discouraging to see institutions who have long advertised themselves as, diverse and pushing that kind of movement to now be so willing to back off, even without necessarily threat of direct punishment or linkage to the federal government?
Yeah, of course. It's a really trying time, and we're fortunate that we do not take federal funding, and so we are as committed as ever to our DEI principles. Racial equity continues to be one of our main goal areas for this region, because we know that even if the ways that we talk and think about it have changed. The impacts remain to, various communities who have long been underserved, and we're here for that support. And so we are not shifting our attention in any way. We're working with people where they are, which is what we've always tried to do.
One of the things that we've been noticing and has been obvious to all is the fluctuations up and down in the stock market. Does that affect your guys' fund balance at all? And how do you guys maintain adaptability in that kind of environment?
Yeah, the fluctuations in the stock market absolutely affect us. Most of our endowment is invested in the stock market. The positive side about this for us is we're really invested for the long term. We're invested forever. And so we can ride these fluctuations and know that over time it will recover. It will, continue to grow. But I'll add that one thing we started doing about 10 years ago is doing local lending. And what that means is a portion of our investment portfolio goes back into the local community instead of the stock market. And we partner with a co-financer like North Edge Community Development or Redwood Region Economic Development Corp. And we're able to do loans to nonprofits that really end up being win-win. So for us, we receive a similar return on our investment by offering still a lower rate to nonprofits than a bank would. And meanwhile, all of that funding stays in the community. And so we've been able to do a number of loans like that, which, we're always looking to grow. And we actually have a webinar this Friday in an area of our website if folks are interested in our local lending, because it really is a wonderful way to both meet the needs of nonprofits and meet the needs of the foundations.
You've been doing this for a while, and you've been a leader at the foundation for a number of years. What do you love about this job and about the foundation that keeps you passionate and engaged in your job?
I love our local community, and I love the role that our foundation is able to play in supporting local community and partnering. So as we all know, there's no shortage of issues, but being part of figuring out how to solve them and how to improve the lives of the people who live here is very enriching. And, it just provides me with, I live here, I raise my kids here. I've lived here for decades, and being able to live somewhere that's so tight knit, that we're able to actually see the impacts when we all come together and do good work together is so huge and amazing. And, the work is never done. So it's always a challenge. There's always, critical thinking and new issues popping up and new ways to think about things and learn from each other. So that's what really gives me the energy to do the work every day.
That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, stay informed.